This is Hot Mike. Welcome back. This is Rap Notes, Festival Rap Notes. We're not quite sure what we're calling this yet, but yeah, we're talking about our past in events and festivals and our experience and why we got out.
Airing the dirty laundry and just having fun.
I asked you to come prepared with a story, maybe even a, I don't know, shit show story. What do you got? What are you thinking of?
I thought of a shit show at Eccles, my beloved venue at Sundance that I ran for 2 years as regional manager. So I had much more of an administrative oversight position where I was, preparing and prepping for the venue months in advance. And then the volunteers come in and they act as theater managers, assistant theater managers, so on and so forth to execute such a big venue. It's, at the time, and I don't know if it still is, but it was the largest theater at Sundance with 1,200 seats.
I can't see that being surpassed. I don't know what the capacity is at the Ray, the new theater.
Right.
But
I'm kind of glad I don't know. Like, I used to know everything about the theaters at Sundance, and it's
we shouldn't speculate. We don't know until we've got a guest in here who can tell us what's what about what's going on. We're just talking about the past.
That's right. So in the past at Eccles, the first weekend of the festival is when we have all the premieres, and so those are the highest demand movies. They have big film teams. Usually the most exciting talent, high-profile talent is attached. And I'm thinking of a specific premiere of Swiss Army Man.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah. You remember that movie.
I am familiar with that film.
Still haven't seen it myself. I think I still want to, but after someone described it to me, I was like, oh, I don't know. That sounds really weird.
Yeah, do you want to see your beloved Daniel Radcliffe as a dead body?
No, not necessarily. And that he's like farting and stuff and like doing weird stuff.
Yeah, it would make sense if you saw it. The farts propel him.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually have not seen it, which once I tell my connection to that, it's kind of embarrassing that I've not seen this yet. But
okay, so
go ahead with this premiere.
The trauma of this premiere is probably why I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
Okay, so we have so many seats at this venue, and yet the way Sundance and any other festival sells tickets is a very tricky process of, well, you want to sell as many tickets as you can to get revenue, but then there are these other stakeholders who have access to a film. And I'm talking about press and anyone who came in with the film team. So, some of these films have big entourages, sometimes 50 or so people. So there's a lot of information sharing ahead of the festival to try to get this just right so that they can sell as many tickets as possible without overselling and leading to a situation kind of like what I'm about to describe.
Okay.
Because at Eccles, you have your ticket holders coming in through a tent, the ticket holder tent. I felt so bad they had to be out in that tent. I mean, it's well heated.
It's January though.
It's January
in Utah.
It's cold.
It's not warm.
Yeah. So you want to be in there as little as possible, but you still have to be in there at the 15-minute mark.
Okay. So
that is what guarantees your access to a film. And at most festivals, it's not such a big deal, but at Sundance for certain films, it's a big deal. So
high demand.
Yep. And if you show up after the 15-minute mark, there is like a mark on your ticket. Like there's a volunteer marking off that you were late. Yeah.
You're already in trouble.
Okay, so we had our ticket holders who had all purchased tickets and had a right to be there, and then there's a wait list area where people are just hoping to get in who didn't buy a ticket but really want to see this movie. And then you have the press line area, which is where the film team and all the press are hanging out and doing their press thing, which tried to stay pretty much away from that area as much as possible. It was always way too crowded. It's one more body in there is not helpful.
Yeah.
So there's and then they're going in their own special entrance, and there's also like the film team and whatnot back in the film lounge or theater lounge. Green room is what it was,
Yeah.
but we weren't allowed to call it a green room for some reason internally.
Oh, interesting.
Do you remember that we called them theater lounges?
I do remember we referred to them as that.
Yeah.
But for your department, that was a very specific decision not to refer to these as green rooms?
Yes.
Oh, I wonder what that's about.
It was something that happened long before I came in, and that's just how I came in.
Okay.
So there are like 4 entry points for people coming into the theater, and to avoid overflowing, like there's a lot of communication between all the volunteer staff of like, okay, we're letting this many in, letting them get seated, making sure we still have room. And then of course there's all the ushers trying to get folks to move in and not save seats. That is one of the hardest things to do at a film festival, is try to get people to not save seats for their friend who just hasn't gotten in yet. And because they haven't gotten in yet, they might not make it in. Because as the ticket line's going in, they're trying to get them all in and then let the press and theater film team, everyone extra who's coming in also gets their seat. So at some point for this premiere, there were more industry people than expected. Like there was just so much hype
buzz around it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Swiss Army Man, like everyone was talking about it that year. I saw Daniel Radcliffe come in, and he looked like he had been a little strung out, like who knows from what, just coming in from some other thing. He looked like he was in rough shape.
Okay.
I think the altitude's pretty hard for anyone coming in, but there might have been some other things in the mix. Who knows?
Speculate.
I'm going to speculate he was like strung out on cocaine like you had a good night of drugs.
Uh-huh.
That's my guess. But yeah, so he's there with all his people. I think he maybe had extra people. I don't know, but we let in more, the theater staff let in more industry people than we expected. And then there were ticket holders getting in who were there before the 15-minute mark. So they had, their guarantee that they'd get in and get seated. They were let in. But at some point, we overfilled the theater. So there were about 50 people walking around who had been let into the theater but did not have seats.
Oh, boy. That sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, my God. It is a theater manager's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people walking around were either ticket holders who had every right to be there, or industry people who are the Harvey Weinstein types of like, I have to see this movie and you're not going to stop me. And of course we have our laws around, fire code. There are people who would love to just sit in the aisle. That's how badly they want to see it. They're like, I'll just stand. I'm like, I know, but I really can't let you do that. Yeah. So it was a bit of a nightmare. Linda.
Who's to blame?
Oh, well.
First and last name, please.
I'm not going to name names.
Let's dox them. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not going to name names, but there was a communication breakdown somewhere in the theater management line of communication.
Okay.
So either a assistant theater manager outside not communicating properly how many people they had let in already, or someone on the inside of the theater incorrectly telling the outside how many seats were still available. But of course, all of this is happening so quickly, and the turnaround time at Eccles was not what it needed to be for that size of a theater. So we're getting people out as quickly as possible and getting them in as quickly as possible. And this was, just a miscommunication breakdown. What
was the solution? How did you start the film?
Okay, well, the solution, Linda Faflin, the ticketing, the saint of ticketing, patron saint of festival ticketing, comes down herself. She's big, important person at Sundance, head of the whole ticketing office, and she'll come down, and anyone who was not able to get a seat in the theater is out there to talk to her. And she's there with a stack of her like special tickets, like this will get you into anything. Take it to the theater box office and get another ticket to see something else.
Okay.
But we got everyone out who couldn't get a seat into the lobby and let them air their grievances, talk to them, tried to explain what happened, why they couldn't come in to see the film, what we could do for them, and ate crow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Linda came in with the rescue of, here's at least a consolation prize to soften this blow.
Yeah. And like, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear you out. I'm going to explain what happened as best I can. But at the end of the day, this is what I can do for you. Yeah.
That's a tough situation.
She was really good at it, but I can tell she's just done it more times than she'd liked. Yeah.
Well, that was a big film, and it's technically a Sundance film in that it was created or developed at the Summer Labs. And so it was
Probably
a
had something
Labs
to do with
film.
the
Yeah, that's absolutely why it was premiered there. I mean, certainly it had to come to fruition. You have to actually make the film. At the Labs, you're just workshopping. So the Daniels, two fellas named Daniel, paired up, and they're a writing directing team.
Nice.
And very creative. They do a lot of tricks within the camera. They do some pretty old style things with practical effects. But I was disappointed when it came out. I was working at the Labs that year, and two completely different actors were tied to the project. One of them being Beck Bennett, who went on to who was a SNL cast member at the time and still is. Can you picture him?
No.
Okay.
But I bet my brother can.
Oh, sure. I bet he can.
He's an SNL pro.
Yeah. For somebody who watches, regularly, he's, pretty predominant cast member. And I think recently, he was Mike Pence through a lot of the election and stuff. Anyway, super nice guy. He was the character that Daniel Radcliffe plays. He's the dead body. And then the other actor, I'm sad that I forget his name, but he was an actor out of Chicago, and he was fantastic, and that's who Paul Dano ended up playing. But I think for the Daniels, this was important to have these two characters, or these two actors, working on the project as they're kind of going through the growing pains of making their first feature. And I was just a little disappointed that it didn't go to those specific actors, but I think they probably got the funding that they're like, we can actually afford some real name actors. And I mean, as far as that age demographic, you don't get a bigger name than a Daniel Radcliffe. And even a Paul Dano is a seasoned veteran by this point in his career. But so I have interacted with the Daniels. I got to be there on set a couple of days as they were doing wild stuff, running through the woods. And I remember hearing stories of editors talking about dailies they're processing, and they're doing some weird stuff where the guy's farting and like flying across the forest. And he's like riding on his back, and I
still kind of want to see it. Just because it sounds so wild.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Daniels also did I don't know if you ever saw the Turn Down for What video from Lil Jon. It is an insanely cool music video.
I've seen that video.
People keep falling through the ceiling into the floor.
Oh, I love that video.
It's just a crazy dance party. So you know the main guy who's dancing. It's an Asian man.
Okay.
And it's she's Asian too. She's Indian, and I think he's maybe Korean. He is one of the directors. He is one of the Daniels.
Oh,
so one of the featured guy who's dancing in that Turn Down for What he's one of the creative duo.
Huh.
They're such a funny, quirky duo. That Daniels is like shorter guy, great dancer. The other Daniels is like this tall, lanky white guy. They're just such an odd couple, but they are the Daniels.
That makes me want to watch that music video again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to go back to that.
Yeah. But so my story was just that premiere was very memorable. I've never seen that happen before or since. And I think the biggest fail about it that hurt hurt me inside was that we had to start the film essentially 30 minutes late, which is like, when you think about film festivals and the ones we've been involved with, starting on time is such an important part of it. Even starting 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late can throw off so much for the audience and for the venue to recover from. And they keep that film schedule so tight to pack it in, or they did. Who knows what will happen now? It just doesn't leave much room for error. Like, there's very little time to make up for things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you know whether that would have been the last screening of the day at Eccles, or did that screw up all the other screening times for the rest of the evening?
The pace of Eccles was there were 5 screenings a day, starting at 9 a.m. And I believe this was 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it was the last one, I probably wouldn't even be telling this story, because it wouldn't be as big of a deal.
Thing. Yeah.
It was the last showing of the day.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been so much better.
Yeah. Did you ever have somebody ask you the cliche of, "Don't you know who I am?"
Oh gosh. Oh yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Did you know who they were?
No, pretty sure not.
Really?
Yeah, because it was usually
That's the funniest thing.
Yeah, I don't think I did, because a lot of that was I was interacting with a film team, and it was so and so's, person, like assistant or publicist, or it was
Don't
usually.
You know who this is?
It was usually a publicist.
It was somebody else doing it on behalf of their client.
Yes, I'm like,
wow.
Oh well, I know who your client is. I didn't know what your role was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only person I've ever heard that from, and it's such a good cliche, such an old cliche, was Brett Ratner. Do you know that director? Director of
yes.
Rush Hour.
Yes.
And
he got hashtag
others.
Me Too'd pretty hard, right?
Yeah. And once again, we were with a friend over the weekend, and we were sharing our Harvey Weinstein stories.
Yes.
And talking about how when that news broke, most people in America, their reaction was, well, who the hell's Harvey Weinstein? I don't know that. I don't know who it is. For us, we ran in those circles. We were at these big events, premieres, and things like that, where Harvey Weinstein would be present. And we were warned about him. I wasn't warned about Brett Ratner, but when the story broke about him, same with Harvey, it was kind of a, oh, yeah, that tracks kind of moment. But Brett I couldn't let him into, it was at the TCL, the Chinese Theater. And
call it the Grauman's.
The Grauman's. It was not the Grauman's when I was there.
Oh.
It was the Man Chinese Theater.
Okay.
Yeah. It's gone under...
It's a lot of different names.
A lot of different names over the years. That's why every time I go back to TCM or even to the H&H complex in Hollywood, I don't know what things are going to be called anymore, because the ownership just keeps moving around. But Grauman's. And the theater was being cleaned. We were still adjusting reserve seating, and he wanted to get in early, and he gave the old, "Do you know who I am?" And I was like, yeah, I do. It doesn't mean you can get in. Like, this is also for your benefit, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Brett Ratner.
It's people like him,
yeah.
People like Harvey, that was another reason I tried to stay away from the press area as much as I could.
Yeah. Well, and that was, if Harvey was coming to an event, it was talked about, and it was like, hey, Mr. Weinstein will be attending. Just go ahead and do yourself a favor and stay the hell out of his way. And it really would be like you'd sense his presence in the room, and then you're kind of clinging the wall as you're trying to get to an exit. Yeah. Yeah, he was kind of a black hole of energy, too.
I'm not sure he ever made it through a festival without yelling at a volunteer.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was kind of his staple, was like, I bet taking it out on somebody just lives right beneath the surface for him. Oh, yeah. The time I remember most specifically, like seeing him, feeling his energy, it was in LA, and it was at the Roosevelt Hotel, and it was for the premiere of Walter Mitty, the Curious Life of Walter Mitty.
That sounds right.
The Curious Case of Walter Mitty. No, that's Benjamin Button. I don't know. I didn't see the movie, but I was working the event, and Harvey showed up to the after party of the premiere with Charlize Theron. Like, he had his arm locked around her waist, and it was almost like she was his accessory. He was like grabbing onto her like it was his clutch bag.
Just glued to his side.
And this was before, certainly years before any of the allegations came out of abuse, but it was already rumored, or there were murmurs of just like, that's not a good dude. Like, yeah, he owns Miramax. They make some of the greatest films ever made consistently, but this guy's not a good dude. And you can see it. You can smell it on him. He really, like that black hole energy, like when he was in the room, it was just like, I'm not comfortable right now. I'm on edge. And seeing that with Charlize, it was like, what kind of power does he hold over these people? This unnatural power that such a disgusting, despicable dude can clutch on to one of the most beautiful and most talented actresses in the business, and just like, she didn't seem comfortable. Yeah, it's a weird level of power that you can get to, where it's like he was able to abuse it in such an egregious way.
It's not that he's the only kind of guy doing bad stuff, but I take comfort thinking that he is an outlier. You know, that men don't get to this much power too often. Or people, I should say. I know women are also guilty of abusing power. Hashtag Ellen DeGeneres. Heard about that.
Yeah.
And it just, sounds like a situation that gets out of hand. And
that's a situation. I have a friend. I can't speak on what his experience was, but he worked, and maybe someday I'll be able to sit across from him and have this conversation.
Oh, that'd be fun.
I don't know that he would do that, though. He might have an NDA that he can't be saying anything, or she'll own his house.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to drop his name, but but he was a personal assistant, so worked very closely. I bet has some stories, and I did hear some stories from him, but they weren't the same caliber as what's coming out of abuse. But there's a stand-up comedian named Greg Fitzsimmons who used to be a writer on her show, and I was listening to him talk about his experience while writing for her on the show, and that he's basically saying there's no way to exaggerate what people are saying. It's even worse than they're saying it. It's like, you don't even understand how unhealthy this was as a work environment. And he's like, before all this broke, there was a text chain that he was a part of, where it's all past employees, past writers, past line producers, grips, anybody who was working on the production and really had grievances to air. It was almost like group therapy. And he's like, you would not believe the things that are on this group text. He's like, you're just seeing a tiny tip of the iceberg in these accusations of what a tyrant she was as a boss, as a owner producer of this show. But that never got into my orbit, other than my friend had worked for her for a number of years. But
I always had a weird feeling about her show, and I never really had a reason for it, so this totally justifies it.
Yeah, now you feel validated in
a little bit, in a weird way. Like, I just never got into her show, even though, guests would come on that, I'd look up the clip on YouTube and end up watching a little bit of Ellen, and it's like, no, that's just not for me.
Yeah.
As much as I love gay women.
Yeah.
I'm all about that.
Yeah. Believe all women. What?
What? Whoa. Getting into that hot take.
No. I have enjoyed guests on her show, but it's only for the guest. Like David Spade makes one of the greatest consecutive appearances. He has a great back and forth with her always. But I'm watching for David, not for Ellen.
I think that's also where to find the Kristen Bell freaking out over a sloth video is from Ellen's show. That's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah. So there's certainly I don't know. I don't think I have anything more to say about Ellen.
Well, I'll go back to one more element in my story.
Yeah.
That occurred to me as we're talking, because you asked me like who was responsible, and then you asked me about the timing of it of the premiere within the schedule of the day. Like how much did this 30-minute delay fuck up the day?
Yeah.
And what I remember now is that there was a volunteer shift change right after this happened. So the way that venue worked, it was such long hours, and volunteers are volunteering their time. They still expect to have enough time to enjoy themselves and watch some movies because they're not getting paid to do it. They're just, well, some of them get lodging, and then you're really lucky. But this is they only work half the day, and there's a team A and a team B, and they have a schedule, and there's always a shift change. And there was a shift change, and I remember the head theater manager of the next team coming in and getting caught up on what just happened, and just the look in his face, and just like, yeah, so sorry, this is what you're coming into, like.
Ooh.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Painful.
Yeah. Of course, I was working all day. I was the one that was there the whole day because I was getting paid, and that was what I was there to do. But I just remember once we got halfway through the festival, the volunteers I was working with started to realize that I was the one that was there all day, and they were like, "That's too long. You should not. That's crazy." Like it was a little crazy.
I'm gonna throw this out there as a theory that I think the best and worst quality to have in a volunteer, like it's kind of a double-edged sword, is experience.
Ooh, that's a hot take.
Yeah.
And I like it. Yeah.
It can benefit you, you as a manager, as a theater manager, which this is from an outside perspective, inside, outside. I've never been a theater manager, but this is from my perspective of working close to them, to you specifically, and your colleagues, that volunteers with experience, they can be beneficial in that a situation arises and they can say, oh, it's okay, I've been here before, I know what to do in this situation, I have this situational memory of this, and now I can take that and make my decision.
Yeah.
And then there is the experience is a detriment because I think it is just part of our nature. Like we want consistency, or we strive for consistency. And you might have a volunteer who comes into your venue and they've done it for maybe 5 years, maybe 7 festivals they've attended, and they're so proud of. They look at all my badges, I have 7 volunteer jackets. Can you believe it? I can't. Where do you keep them all? And they don't want change. And as you and I know, the months leading up to the festival, meeting after meeting, planning and prepping, it's all about change.
Yes.
And we are adapting to that change in real time. They are not. They're slammed with it, and that's when you want a new volunteer. So the experience can help or hinder them as an essential asset to, like, I need people to run this theater.
Mm-hmm.
That person has a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm.
They might be my biggest problem.
Yes.
And it's counterintuitive.
Yes.
Like,
But,
you wouldn't think that. You go.
Let's clarify, though, when you say experience, it's someone who has volunteered specifically at that festival before.
Correct.
There's this other level of experience in a volunteer that I think of, which is someone who has the experience of being paid to work a festival, like maybe has done a position like yours at some other festival.
Okay.
And that they're just doing Sundance because it's Sundance, and this is kind of their working vacation kind of thing. And so they actually have empathy, like they have some awareness around why these changes would be being made. And yeah, it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
There are volunteers who fit this description.
Yeah.
But what you're describing is a much more common effect of this person is local. They don't do other film festivals, so they don't have that perception of like, well, why would things be different this year as opposed to last year, or between venues, just different regions do things differently. That's their festival. They do it every year, and they don't like change.
Yeah.
They really don't.
Oh, and they're quick to tell you how it used to be.
Yes. Oh, yes. And I just want to be like, well, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter. I really don't care.
That's irrelevant.
Good to know.
It's cool.
But I'm not storing that information.
Sure, go back to 2012 when they did it that way. That's not how we're doing it anymore.
We have smartphones now,
Uh-huh.
and we're trying to cut back on paper, so things are going digital.
So you mentioned a type of a volunteer, and it was really when you were like, they're doing this because it's Sundance.
Yeah.
I can picture these kind of volunteers
mm-hmm.
who have you ever heard the term starfucker? I'm going there.
It sounds akin to Jersey Chaser.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah. I'd not heard that term, but yeah.
I went to a basketball school.
There you go. So when I'm taking this, that's actually the title of a Rolling Stones song.
Uh-huh.
And it's all about, it's really about one gal that Mick Jagger was dating, and he was really into her, but she was like sleeping around, and in the song, he's like, he's really mad because she gave head to Steve McQueen, and it's a wild song. But you'd have that kind of mentality in volunteers where it's like they would just hit festivals it's like, I just want that name. I want that name on my hit list of, but what they don't know is that I don't care where you volunteered. Wait, you mean that thing that you do for free, that nobody pays you and compensates you for your time? The thing that you're utterly unqualified to do?
I'm going to ask you a question
yeah.
that I think you want to ask me, so I'll ask you first.
Oh, okay.
Which is, what would your guess...
I'm going hard on volunteers.
I know. I'm going to give you the perfect opportunity.
I've not had good experiences with volunteers. Can you tell?
What do you think the fraction of volunteers who volunteer at film festivals are actually useful? Percentage.
Mm. Now, yes, that is a great question because you are more qualified to answer that than I am, because your experience with volunteers is a lot more extensive than mine.
Mm-hmm.
So in my limited experience, and I would say it's around 20%, 15 to 20%.
I was also going to say 20%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's very validating.
Yeah, I'd say it's about 2 and 10 are like getting the picture, are useful, can talk to people in a good way, can be a team player. And I want to clarify that I love working with volunteers. Mm-hmm. I'm someone who, even after all those festivals, I still really love volunteers. And I enjoy probably 8 or 9 out of 10 volunteers. I enjoy working with them. We'll end up getting to know each other. We'll end up shooting the shit because that's all they're really there to do. Like some senior citizens are doing their best to help out, but with how fast the operation's moving, they're kind of useful just for conversation during the lulls.
Yeah.
There could be some pretty long lulls, and that's when I want to...
Useful during the lulls, also known as useless. The lulls. Oh, that's when you're handy to have around?
Yeah.
No, I'm going... I'm going so hard on volunteers, I recognize that it is unkind, and this is an extremely generous thing to do with your time. But as somebody, I'll take it outside of that industry. I have worked with groups of volunteers running a program for social services where each shift within this social service required 12 to 15 volunteers, essential positions in order to run this program. Volunteers, there's no accountability. They've got a schedule, but if something else comes up, it's not your job. You're volunteering, yet you are essential. Now to bring it back into our industry, I think you were doing, I mean, these are people who are there for the festival. So they're at least going to show up.
Yes, because there's a little bit of accountability in that, you know, if you totally screw up or just blow off a volunteer position at like Sundance,
you could lose housing.
You could lose all your. You could also get blacklisted.
Yeah,
from
never work this festival
from volunteering
again.
again. You'll have to pay for your tickets and
your name. Yeah,
do it that way. I mean, I don't think they would stop you from attending the festival, but you don't get to volunteer again. You don't get to work again.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel bad, but I don't at the same time. I feel bad in that what they're doing is very generous.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have, honestly, like one paid staffer over 8 to 10 volunteered people who are there for a far limited amount of time, and not just like the duration of the festival, the duration of the day. You're there a fraction of the day. You don't know what happened this morning unless I tell you.
Yeah.
You're not going to be here for whatever goes on this evening unless I tell you tomorrow on your shift. There's a lack of consistency, and that's not on them. I mean, they're capitalizing on, hey, this benefits, I can go have this great experience, work an event that I really love, and whether it's an organization they have a lot of respect for, whether it's TCM or LA Film Festival or Sundance Film Festival or Toronto, they might just, I want to have those bragging rights.
Yeah, that's totally a thing. That's the culture.
Bunch of star fuckers.
And then there are people who are actually there to hopefully make industry connections.
Yeah.
And what would have driven you crazy if you had to work with more volunteers is the consistency of them being a legit film buff, movie lover, talking nonstop about independent film. Yeah. And
that's such a real thing. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Well, and it's volunteers and staff.
Yeah.
Did you find... I think even when you and I got together, that we both weren't sure whether we were completely like pretentious about films.
There's an assumption you can make if you know someone used to work for Sundance that they probably are.
That they have all these strong opinions about independent film and the direction of film
and the films you should have seen by now.
Yes. Yes. Those people drive me insane. And I am a film lover.
Yeah.
I am a cinephile. But just because it's at Sundance and just because it's independent doesn't mean it's any good. It doesn't mean it's inherently good. But it's art. Art is subjective. And I think... That's the thing is I had people over the years of working for many different film festivals, but Sundance was certainly the one that I was most tied to and worked the most consistently, almost 10 years. I'd have family members who would say, I saw this film, and it said it was a Sundance film, and I hated it.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was going to be good because it's a Sundance.
Sure.
It's like, well, Sundance, and you got the little palm leaves around the title. That is not a stamp of like quality, or it's quality in the sense that this is a real film. Somebody made a real film. This is a real artist vision come to life, and now you get to experience. It has enough quality that it got to Sundance. It does not mean it's going to be for everyone. I'll argue if it's at Sundance, it's for these little niches.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. If it's at Sundance, it actually means it's probably done something totally different than what you're used to in a mainstream audience. But some of them do get to the mainstream audience, and they fall for it. Yeah.
And it might really challenge you. And that might be the exact intention of the director, of the filmmaker. Like, I want to challenge my audience. And you might go in because there's an actor tied to it that you love. And you're like, oh, I love Amy Adams, or ooh, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I like him. Natalie Portman, great. And then you're like, Hesher, this is about some crazy death metal freak who's mentoring a little boy. It's bizarre movies.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, Hesher's a great movie. I did like that. Out of all the Sundance films I saw,
that's hilarious. Good shout out.
Yeah. That was a strong one.
Sundance and other film festivals are the reason I have seen things I truly regret seeing, that they challenged me in ways I wasn't really ready for. And maybe I just went in to see that film because there was all this hype around it. And they are very good at not giving it away in the description, generally. They want you to have just enough to be curious. They don't give away the big twists like mainstream movies do in the trailer. In the trailer, yeah.
That is a good point. It's so interesting that you have the film guide in front of you, and you're flipping through, and you've got a little thumbnail to go off of. And not always will it be in color. Not always will it be a really good picture. It might be really grainy. It might be like, oh, this is the best they could do. And then a tiny little description. It might tell you a little bit what the vibe is, what the genre of film. But typically independent films, they're kind of genre benders. Like they kind of, they'll take on a couple of different elements to a mainstream genre, mash it up. And sometimes it works. Most of the time it doesn't work.
Well, most of the time, the across the board, what you're getting with independent film is that it's trying to challenge you in some way, whether that's emotionally or culturally or experientially. They are trying to challenge you. Yeah. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah. And I've certainly enjoyed independent films, but I wouldn't say I enjoy independent film.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That's a good distinction.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a little bit blasphemous considering
for sure.
our background.
Oh, for sure. This is not a popular opinion, and that's why I didn't say it while I was working there.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be the perception would be like, well, then get the hell out of here. Love it or leave it. Like if you don't like it, independent film, then go somewhere else. And what I have to say to that is no. I'm good at my job. And you need me.
Right. Because there are these two worlds within film festivals and filmmaking itself, which I think with Quentin Tarantino's new book with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it does a really good job of showing the two worlds of there is the logistics, like I'm actually putting things together, like stuntmen, logistics, production, theater ops. Like we don't need to have a full appreciation for independent film or a big stake in it to do our jobs. There's a line in the book, in Quentin's book about, and it's being told from Cliff's perspective, and he's talking about how little the stunt community cares about movies.
Yeah.
It's like their whole business is on the back end, and they're not spending time on the front end because it's not worth their time. They're so focused on what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we didn't have to be. We didn't have to be super into it.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make an amendment to that statement. They didn't, I said I was good at my job and they needed me. They didn't need me. I was easily replaced.
Well, that's the business we were in.
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
But I stand by the statement that most independent films suck.
Now, I have to admit.
Yeah. Not all. Not all.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean that I'm not a ride or die with the studio system.
Mm-hmm.
The studio system is very tired.
Mm-hmm.
What I think I'm saying is I don't like new movies.
We live in the 90s.
That's why this is so important to me, because these are the films that if I could only watch from this collection, I'd be a little sad, but only a little, and then it would go away because I got this collection here.
Right.
These are wonderful films. There's been so many films, excellent films made, that it's almost like classic music. And occasionally I will see a new film that I really like, but I don't see them often. Not just that I don't like, I just don't see them often.
Right.
It's not a priority for me. I'm okay rewatching films over and over again. I have such a tie to them with nostalgia, and they make me feel good. It's like throwing on a classic song, and you know it's going to make you feel a certain way. It's like a drug.
And you get to know that artwork so well that it's way easier to reference. It's easy to see the references to it in other mediums and other artworks.
Your appreciation will grow.
Yeah, the way you see it will change.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm afraid that, you know how like you get to a certain age and you stop listening to new music.
Oh, yeah.
And like you just listen to, like, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s and then the 2000s, the music industry started to change and pop sounded so different and you're disgusted by it, that you just put it away. And then you just live in the 80s and 90s. I'm afraid that's what I've done, not just with movies, but also with music, too. Primarily
Not yet. You still listen to new stuff.
That's true.
I think it's easier for you than watching new stuff. And I was just remembering that there have been a few times now where we've gone to watch something new, and there's this hesitancy. And we'll actually start it, and you'll be like, no. I
don't want to do this.
Bail. I'm bailing. I got to bail. Not ready for this.
Yeah.
But to the instinct or the muscle to go back to a favorite is like, oh, well, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I know this movie. I know it's going to make me feel the way I want to feel right now.
God, does that make me totally boring?
No, I don't think so.
No.
No.
Afraid of trying new things. Well, I mean, the honesty, like the honest truth is, like, most movies, like as a kid, I just liked watching movies.
Sure.
I had no taste in film, but then it developed over time, and then I had kind of like, this is what I enjoy. I know why I like it. That's why maybe a certain film will come out, and I'll be like, I know, or a certain director. That's a lot of it. I'm just not willing to gamble with my time the same way as some other people. And I think some people also love hating movies. I think they have an identity in that. And for those people, Sundance, not just Sundance, festivals bring out the worst in them. Because what they want to do more than anything is complain about someone else's blood, sweat, and tears. What they have put there, what they want to do.
Invested so much.
Hey, as much as I don't like independent film, I don't like that person even more who wants to sit online waiting on the wait list, going in and talking shit about the last movie that they saw. That person, I I want to have them on the podcast. No.
I have some questions.
I struggle with that. We've talked about this. I don't think we've talked about it on Rap Notes, but Turner Classic Movies, fantastic. Turner, great organization. TCM, fantastic channel. And then 12 years ago they started the festival, roughly.
Yeah,
12
I think
years
that's
ago.
about right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great, brilliant idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think they having a festival was so important for the golden era of cinema, and it really got to celebrate the timing. I think it was great because we're losing that generation, and when you work TCM and you see these lines of old ancient people and they'll tell stories about, I waited in line to see this movie when I was a teenager or something, so many 60 some years ago, and I can't believe I get to see it again on the big screen. What you're not seeing at TCM is people standing in a line talking shit about the movie they just saw, where that runs rampant at Sundance. And they'll be the only movies that get buzz. They're the unique visions. They're the challenging films that are like avant-garde, and it's like, well, we haven't seen anything like this before, and everybody's talking about it and like, oh, I gotta see it. By far the most of the conversation is somebody telling you why they didn't like the movie they just saw.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. And in the more in the wealthier communities you're in, the worse it is. So I did the Mill Valley Film Festival.
Oh, okay. Tell me about that.
I mean, I had never been to that area before working this festival. It's beautiful. It's right above
it's north of the
San
bay.
Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah.
How far north? I never quite
not far, like 30
got
minutes,
up that way.
I think, without checking.
So you cross over the bridge and then you keep heading north.
Yeah, it's just like right there. Yeah.
Is it secluded? Like, are you in the forest? Have you gotten up into the redwoods? Or is it like a town?
It's been long enough now. I don't remember.
Okay.
I think it was just a town, and there was nature pretty nearby, pretty close. But I just remember the amount of privilege in that area was so high. This was where I actually got to work at the theater that the original Star Wars trilogy premiered in.
Oh yeah.
It was a very special place to be in because it is. At this point, no longer a theater. It is a furniture store, like a carpet store or something. Wow. You cannot. So it was a 600-seat theater, and there just wasn't enough ticket sales for that quality of theater. They just could never fill it.
You know, that's so fitting that's where they premiered, because the Forest Moon of Endor, where the Ewoks live, that was all filmed just north of that. Yeah. So in all of those redwood forests and stuff, when they're having the speeder bike chases and stuff, that all happens right there. It's basically George Lucas's backyard.
Yeah. But I like that you're pointing out TCM's audience and how amazing they were, because they were the best audience for that reason. And if they were talking shit in line, I feel like a lot of it was like, I didn't get into this movie because it was full. Yeah. It's like that was the level of dedication of their audience. Was they had to do so much guesswork around where to put what movie. And sometimes if a movie was on a 35 millimeter print, which they're probably one of the only festivals still showing 35 millimeter print, there were only specific theaters that could show had the equipment to do that type of film. And they were, one was tiny, one was bigger, but had other demands. And so it was such a special festival.
It was not void of complaints. It's not that these patrons
they're
were
still going to complain. And they also complained a lot about the curiosities of being at Hollywood and Highland. Okay. I mean, that's a pretty harsh juxtaposition of a crowd that's coming in that's a very, I don't know, they just maybe might be a little high maintenance, and then they're right next to the buskers and hoodlums of H&H.
Gets pretty wild there.
Yeah, it gets pretty wild.
Yeah, I remember getting a complaint that a woman, I think I was just helping with logistics, and it was a red carpet event. I can't even remember what was being screened or what was, but there was a lot of talent there, and it was like I said before, ancient talent. Like Mickey Rooney was there before he passed away. And I just remember the woman saying she wanted to get closer because she couldn't see Robert Wagner. She loved Bob Wagner. And I remember, like, in that moment being like, I wonder if she knows about or if she thinks or believes that he murdered his wife, Rachel Wood.
Oh, I don't know that story.
That's what we're going to cover on the next Rap Notes.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
This has been awesome, Vanessa.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. This is Hot Mike. This is Festival Rap Notes. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.